What is Thrillist?
What is Thrillist? So we started as a men's lifestyle guide, sort of a city guide, about 6 years ago, and since have built a commerce business on the back of it. And so we're a new media company connecting content and commerce.
And you actually have revenue, right?
We do. It's crazy, I know.
That's a radical idea.
Yes.
How is the company doing business-wise?
Business-wise, we're doing great. So, we started very small with small aspirations and have basically doubled year over year for 6 years now. And we're about 180 people and profitable, amazingly, and continuing to grow.
Before the show, I went to the site and I could sign up for deals that could be sent to me by email.
Yeah.
How is that different from Gilt, other than this is specifically aimed at men?
So that's our business, Jack Threads, which is a fashion flash sale site. It's similar to Gilt in that we are selling clothing to people online. It's a very different demographic we're reaching. We're reaching younger guys. We're featuring a very different array of brands. And I think a big piece of what we do is it's really not as much about the brands that we sell as it is about the trust that people have with Thrillist and with Jack Threads. And so we're actually even able to create our own merchandise. Just last week we launched our first in-house brand called Good Ale, which is a brand we built completely from scratch, and we sell it as if it's not necessarily our brand, and guys buy it because they trust us.
You know, I think Thrillist is a really interesting example of a disruptive media company. You know, when I was sort of, younger and looking at, where did you get content from? You got it from magazines, Esquire, Maxim, GQ, whatever. How much of your success is attributable to those companies not sort of moving to the digital world well?
I think a pretty good amount of our success, actually. When we got started, we really looked at the national men's mags, the GQs and the Maxims and whatnot, and said, these guys have a voice that we trust, and we would love to get actionable local content from them, but they weren't featuring that content, and we really sought to sort of fill a gap between the local city guides that my mother and I were both supposed to read, and the men's magazines, and bring a voice that we trusted to local content.
Right. How do you keep that trust as you get more and more successful? There's going to be more and more jockeying for position by product managers to get their stuff on your site.
Yeah.
How do you stay clean?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think at the end of the day, how do you stay clean in anything? You just stay really focused on executing and making sure that the quality remains. And, we have a really robust data set. We get to see the performance of what we write about. And at the end of the day, when people take our recommendations to heart and they actually act on them, we know that we're making the right recommendations. And so we try to make sure, as time goes on, that we continue to drive action from everything that we do. And we've done a good job doing that.
Now, you've just got a new president in. He's Philippe Guillotin, to oversee content strategy. He comes from an old media company, and you're a new media company.
Yes.
Is that sort of a backwards move? Explain that.
The worst thing about Philippe is his resume. Even though he has a ton of experience, he'll say to you, he's not ashamed of it, but he is a very, very, very forward thinker, a very digital thinker, and I think many of the best things that Hachette were doing were because of him, but he was in a traditional media company, and it's very hard to sort of break out of some of the bad habits that traditional media seems to be in. And so everything that I've seen from him since he's been with us and during the process as I got to know him was a real eye towards the future and towards just disrupting the way that traditional media companies think about content creation.
How did you land him, and now that he's on board, how do you think he's going to help move the needle at Thrillist?
Well, I think one big piece of it is just removing some bottlenecks. And so I was in a position where I was overseeing sort of product at the end of the day and also the business piece, and I did want a little bit of separation of church and state there. I just had too many things that ultimately came to me, and I wasn't moving fast enough.
What changes are we going to see now that he's on board?
Well, so now editorial, product, consumer-facing technology, marketing are all reporting into him. And so he's going to have his hands in everything that our consumer sees.
So will we see anything different when we go to the site? Will
I think you'll see a lot, yeah. I mean, one of the big ideas that we have, we're very strong in food and drink from a content perspective on Thrillist, and we're very strong in fashion from a commerce perspective on Jack Threads, but there's a ton of verticals that are interesting to our guys, be it travel, consumer electronics, sports, et cetera, et cetera. We're not really doing much in a bunch of interesting categories, and we have a large user base who we know has appetite for these things, and a big group of advertisers who want us to create content in these areas.